Today on the LA Food Podcast, I'm your host, Lucas Revodio, and you may want to ensure you're wearing your Sunday best, dear listener, because on this episode, we're joined by Los Angeles culinary royalty. Gilberto Cetina is the chef and owner of Holbox, the Los Angeles Times 2023 Restaurant of the Year. Cetina and his family have been blessing our city with the food of the Yucatan for the better part of 2 decades now, serving up dishes like Chichen Itza pibil and panuchos out of the iconic Mercado La Paloma in South LA. Since 2017, Cetina's focus has been on ideating and executing some of the most exciting mariscos preparations you can find anywhere in the country, from smoked campachi tacos that perfectly distill the essence of the fish into a few glorious bites to tostadas raspadas that crackle tantalizingly in your mouth like good old chicharrones. On this episode, Cetina traces the journey that brought him to where he is today. The story culminates, of course, with the opening of Holbox, and Chef Cetina is very generous in letting us see behind the curtain to learn more about the magic behind some of his most iconic dishes. Of course, no conversation with Cetina would be complete without asking him what it's been like to be showered with accolades in recent years. He tells us a moving story of how the LA Times Award marked a full circle moment for him in his career, and he also roasts me for ranking Holbox third in my own personal list of best LA taquerias. Needless to say, I deserved it. One quick housekeeping note, like most of Los Angeles, my microphone decided to go on strike for this episode. However, while my sound quality is far from 5 stars, Chef Cetina's audio is pretty much loud and clear. And that's what really matters, because let's face it, you get enough of my 8th grade humor on this pod as it is. So without further ado, let's chat down. Joining us today on the LA Food Podcast, it's the chef and owner of Chichen Itza and the LA Times Restaurant of the Year, Holbox. It's Chef Gilberto Cetina Jr. Chef, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. It is my pleasure and an honor to be your guest.
Oh my God, the honor is all ours, and I am so excited just to meet you through the virtual screen. What are your LA stomping grounds? Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Torrance. I'm actually home today. Monday is my day off, and just chilling at home and recording this podcast.
Well, it's even more of an honor to know you're doing this on your day off. How do you typically spend your days off when you're not recording podcasts?
My work schedule is pretty hectic. It has been. It's just part of the business, part of being in the restaurant business. So because of that, Mondays are usually a day for crashing. I stay home,
Mhm.
spend some time with my wife, and in the afternoon, spend some time with my daughter, and watch some TV and just crash and recover. Get ready for the week to come.
That's awesome. You watching anything good right now on TV?
Um, you know, um, The Bear was fantastic. Just recently watched that. That was great. Um, what else did I see recently that was really good? Bum, 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 bum. No, nothing else comes to mind.
Well, The Bear, we love that show, so that's the perfect answer, honestly. So you live in Torrance right now, but you grew up in Orange County part of the time. Is that right?
Yeah, so I grew up kind of between Orange County and Mexico. So I was born in Mexico. I lived there till I was 5. Then my family moved to the States, and we landed in Orange County because we had, my dad had a brother there, so there was some family there, and that family connection took us to Costa Mesa. We lived there, and for 8 years. This was till I was around 13 years old, and then we moved back to Mexico. So, and this is when I say Mexico, I mean Merida. That's the part of Mexico that we're from. So Merida, Yucatan, and we were there for about 8 years. When I was 21 years old, moved back to the States, and originally was living in Los Angeles. So we moved back to open Chichen Itza restaurant, which it was my dad's dream to have a Yucatan only menu, to have a little restaurant that served the food of our region of Mexico, which was, or maybe still is, but back then even more so, very underrepresented in the United States, in Los Angeles. So that was the reason why the move back to the states in 2000, between 2000 and 2001.
So let me ask you about what it was like to go from living here in Orange County in Costa Mesa to then going back to Mexico when you were what, 13, 14?
13. Yeah. So, I mean, my sister and I have an older sister. She's a year older than I. We're a little reluctant. We didn't want to move back because, look, we didn't know Mexico really. We didn't really remember it. And I think the first few months were, difficult. The change of environment, we didn't have all the things that we had here. Like, I was really big back then into collecting baseball cards and watching ESPN, and I thought it was the end of the world that I wouldn't have ESPN. But that quickly changed due to just having our cousins around, having family around, and we started experiencing a different side of life that we didn't have here. Even though we had friends here, and we would go out and play, there it was different. We had dozens and dozens of cousins around us all the time, and the just the social, the family and social aspect of living in Mexico. It's a lot different than it is here. There that family connection is so important. It's so big, and we got to experience that, for 7 or 8 years, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed being in Mexico from the age of 13 to 20. It was a fantastic time.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a good time to, terms of time of your life, in terms of going out, having new experiences, maybe even tasting your first steps of independence as well in Mexico. I'm curious about the difference between the foods you were experiencing as a child in the United States versus when you got to Mexico. I mean, I'm assuming you had some familiarity with that because of what you ate at home, but what was that whole experience like entering into a whole new culinary landscape?
Right, so I was very familiar with the food that we ended up eating when we went back to Mexico because in my household here growing up in the states, cooking was always a side hustle. My parents were always cooking, and they had their 9 to 5s. My dad worked in a restaurant, my mom worked as a cleaning houses, and but the weekends were for selling food. The weekends were full of panuchos and cochinita pibil and tamales, tostadas and empanadas, and this was ongoing for the entire time that we were here. So, as a lot of migrant families end up doing, if you want to make ends meet, and my dad sometimes had two jobs and still would we would do food on the weekends. So I was very familiar with it. My sister and I were always the little helpers with the prep. I especially remember the tamal prep. We would get like a big bowl of steaming hot chicken thighs that we had to shred with our delicate little fingers to help my mom make the filling for the tamales, which we would then sell at church after church service. And this was in Costa Mesa. So we did plenty of that. We ate plenty of the food growing up, so I was very familiar with it. And in my household, my parents were always very insistent on, number one, we speak Spanish at home, and number two, we eat our food at home. There's enough opportunities to explore the local food or American food or different types of food. But at home, it was mostly my mom doing the cooking, and it was all traditional Yucatan style stuff. The type of things that we sell at Chichen Itza restaurant.
Yeah. So did you like this experience of cooking as a kid, or was this more just a lot of kids have chores, have to take out the trash, have to mow the lawn. Yours was filling tamales.
It was a gigantic, never-ending, repetitive chore. We did not like it. We would rather do anything else with our weekend than prepping food and then going out and selling it. No, we didn't like it. And by the time I was 13 and we moved back to Mexico, that was one of the positives about moving back was, yeah, no more vending tamales at the church, or making cochinita for somebody's party. I wanted nothing to do with food after that. I was done for life, I thought.
You say that your family moved back here when you were 21 years old to
Yeah.
over Chichen Itza. Was that something you were always going to be a part of? Was that the life you envisioned for yourself?
No, so I was studying computer science, and was really into programming and yeah, anything computer related. I was doing some jobs here and there, doing some IT work for local businesses and installing networks, and um, I was even selling computers and writing some software as I was still studying for that. Um, so then my dad says, "Hey, I'm gonna open I'm gonna open Chichen Itza. I'm gonna open a restaurant that is gonna focus on Yucatan style food. Can you come and help me for 6 months?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll drop what I'm doing to go down there and help you for 6 months." And I was really in a hurry for those 6 months to be over and get back to my life in Mexico. That didn't work out. My dad asked me, "Hey, can you help me out for another 6 months?" And I said yes. And at that point, being there for about a year, I started to kind of enjoy the work, and I saw that there was a lot that I can do that was outside of the kitchen. So I was focused on, okay, so let's build a website. Let's start a catering business out of our restaurant. Um, and any like kind of front of the house tasks that needed to be done, anything except in the kitchen. No, I was actively avoiding the kitchen. So anything that needed help, that was not cooking. But then about 2 years after, I'm going to say 2000 and around 2004, we opened a second location. So at this second location, we hired a chef to help my dad, because my dad was going to stay at the original location, and I was to manage the new location. So we opened up. Things were going pretty well, but the chef that we'd hired, who he was good, and he was actually from Yucatan. He had that, and he kind of knew the flavor profiles and the food traditions of our part of Mexico. But he did things slightly different than my dad did, and I've constantly found myself trying to help him, let's say, in the kitchen, or correct him, but I didn't know. I didn't know how. I couldn't show him how to do it. So with like a real sense of urgency, I'm like, well, I need to show Jose how to cut the tomatoes the way my dad did for a specific sauce or a sofrito. So I would teach myself how to do it, and then go in the next day and show him how to do it. Um, that didn't go over very well with Jose, but
I
that's
was going to say.
so no, he was very patient with me, and I don't think he really had a choice either, but to accept my help. And as I started, learning slowly, and this is very slowly. I'm talking about learning. I didn't have any knife skills. Uh, my childhood prep knowledge was limited to like shredding chicken and cutting banana leaves, and just tasks that don't really require a lot of skill or using a knife. So I start learning. I start uh, being curious about cooking and other cooking processes. And the more I research to try to, help in the kitchen, the more curious I get. So I start reading cookbooks. I start reading, the cordon bleu books. I start buying those, the entire curriculum, and the CIA books. I start learning about sauces and classic European technique, and meat fabrication, fish fabrication, and charcuterie, and all these things, and bread baking. As a matter of fact, the recipe for bread that we currently use at Chichen Itza and Holbox still is the recipe that I developed while I was at that second location, and that's just something that fascinated me. Once I started learning about it, was baking. I had no idea about yeast and fermentation and proofing and all of that. So I just I just found it fascinating. My dad started noticing that I was doing a very poor job of managing the restaurant and really just spending most of my time being Jose's assistant. And at first, he was reluctant. I don't think he wanted that for me. I think he wanted me to, wear the suit and be the front of the house guy and be the entrepreneur or the restaurateur. And that was never very gratifying for me, and I felt a lot of joy when I was in the kitchen, even if it was doing really simple things. And that's still the case for me. I find the most joy in it in my day when I'm in the kitchen with the crew. Doesn't matter what you're doing, cutting tomatoes, making stocks on the line, doing prep. Doesn't really matter. That's really where why I'm still in this business. Why I enjoy doing it.
What changed? Because you talk about like when you were a kid, you hated, the task of a task of, shredding the chicken for the tamales. What changed between that experience and then this sort of newfound passion and interest and excitement for what's happening in the kitchen?
Because I think when I was a kid, it was, and you used the perfect word earlier. It was a chore. It was a big old chore that we just had to do. And as an adult, during this time, during this process, it really it it came from a place of curiosity, and that turned into genuinely a passion for. I was so enamored with the idea of cooking and learning more. And then I started learning about, these Michelin star restaurants. I'd never heard about that was a thing, and fine dining restaurants and El Bulli and the Fat Duck, which were, all the rage. It got to the point where I was making like sour orange spherifications at the restaurant, and I wasn't serving it to anybody, but it was just like, oh, this is so interesting. I was so curious about it. I quickly, found out also that those things are fun techniques, but are not really, my type of food. But it was fun to learn how to make them. Then my dad realized that I wasn't, doing much management. We hired a manager. He gave me my first chef's knife kit, and he said, "You know what? Go for it." Shortly after that, the restaurant closed, and it was
The
probably
second,
due to the second restaurant. Yeah, it closed, and it was probably due to just really bad management because I wasn't really paying attention to that. And I went back to our original location at Mercado La Paloma, which we're still there today, and to work side by side with my dad. And that's when I really started learning about all the traditional cooking techniques and everything that makes up traditional Yucatan food. Yeah.
that's awesome. So what what lessons did you learn from that closure of the second location of Chichen Itza?
That was a tough one. I mean, it was really difficult financially for us. I thought it was the end of the world. I quickly realized that it wasn't. I also learned that even from what can be considered a failed venture, um, just being out there and doing things always has some positive effects. So like I said, even that was in my eyes, and obviously it was because it closed. It was a failed venture. When we were there is really when we started to get some attention from like local media, and I think it was LA Weekly back in the day. Jonathan Gold was there and started inviting us to food festivals, and we started to get write ups here and there. And we got a lot of traction for being this Mexican restaurant that specializes and is devoted and won't go outside of the realm of Yucatan style Mexican. That's also about the time when there was the interest in the regionality of Mexican cuisine started to become popular, and people started to realize that Mexican food was a lot more than combo menus and enchiladas and burritos and carne asada, and they started to seek out places that's that were regional, that specialized in a specific part of Mexico. Um, I mean, I can obviously think of like Guelaguetza was already going at that time, and they were kind of the pioneers in really exposing the LA diners or to the nuances of regional Oaxacan cooking. So we were doing something similar, smaller scale with Yucatan, and yeah, we got a lot of traction in that sense from being at that location, the MacArthur Park neighborhood of town. And even though it was a failed business venture, I think it did serve us a lot. I mean, for me, it's where I got my start in cooking and got us some traction with the media and kind of got the ball rolling for Chichen Itza, the original Chichen Itza at Mercado La Paloma, and it's continued till this day.
Well, I've heard from a lot of your peers in the industry that one of the hardest things to develop and nurture in the industry is talent. Getting people who work at the restaurant and who are passionate about it and who are dedicated to it. So, if what happened with the second location of Chichen Itza is that you found your way in the kitchen and became the force that you are today, I'd say that's a pretty good success story. What year are we in now when second location closes and you're back in Mercado La Paloma?
So second location closes in 2008, early 2009, actually, right after the crash of '08. So I'm back in the kitchen with my dad every day, coming in and just, you know, doing the work and doing the prep and learning and just kind of honing my skills in the traditional techniques of Mexican cooking, specifically Yucatan style cooking. Shortly after that, my dad starts stepping back from kind of day to day operations at the restaurant. He's getting up there in age, and kitchen work is can be difficult on the body, and you're standing for many hours, and it's hot, and it's not the funnest, not the most comfortable, let's say, place to be working. So he starts stepping back, and I take over as chef of Chichen Itza. This is 2010. We start implementing some changes. We, kind of cleaned up a little bit in terms of the techniques that we're using and just trying to not modernize, keeping everything traditional, but we did kind of sneak in some modern techniques where they were appropriate. For example, turkey breast can be obnoxiously dry. And we sell one of the main items that we sell there are called panuchos. It's a handmade tortilla filled with black beans. It's pan fried crispy, and because it's filled with beans, really only the edge that doesn't have beans gets crispy, and the center is still, kind of soft, like semi crispy. And then it gets topped with shredded turkey. Now, this turkey traditionally is poached, whole
Mhm.
turkey poached. Starting there, we have a problem. You're poaching a whole turkey, and how do you get the breast and the legs cooked perfectly? You can't. So you have to separate it, right? So poached turkey, then it gets this achiote rub, and then it goes on the mesquite grill to get a nice char, and develop flavor and cook the achiote that you rubbed on the outside. Well, at this point, the turkey breast is it's a goner, right? So what I started doing was, well, let's break down the turkey, let's vacuum pack the breast, and let's brine it with all the ingredients that would go into the poaching liquid. So, we would add the cilantro and the oregano, black pepper, everything that would go in the poaching liquid to flavor the turkey. We put that in the bag, made a rub, put it in the bag, sous vide, and cooked it, very gently until it was just barely set, around 145, 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we would take it out of the bag, pat it dry, do the rub, and then cook it on the charcoal grill. And the result was, just so much better. It wasn't dry turkey breast. So small things like that. Really, nothing that changes the essence of the food, but just applying a little bit of modern technique where appropriate. Yeah. So we're at 2011 ish. And that's really when I start playing around with like doing seafood specials, and I just start incorporating a lot of seafood into our specials, into our regular menu, and into also events. If we were doing the taste of something or food and wine something, I would always, do take a big charcoal grill and take some yellowtails or some white sea bass, cook those on the grill and make tacos, things like that. Because I wanted to do seafood. I've been in love with seafood since I was a teenager, and that was there's something that I always wanted to do.
Where did that love come from?
That came from diving with my cousins in the Yucatan. So when I was there as a teenager, so there was this big plot of land my great grandfather purchased. Then he broke it up and gave a piece to his children. One of those children, my grandmother. So as generations passed and my grandmother has kids and that has grandkids, everybody still continues to go to these houses as a vacation spot, right? So we have like five plots of land right next to each other. And in one, it's all my first cousins, and then I have second and third cousins. And it was, at one point, we would have hundreds of people at the same time. And that's and it's one of the most beautiful memories that I have of of family, of just I know so many of my first and second and third cousins, and don't just know them by name, but we actually hung out and we did fun things. And you know so me and my first cousins, we would always be hanging out, and there was another one of my cousins, older. He was a second cousin, but he was an amateur diver and spear fisherman, and he would go out. We would be out there, in the chilling, and he would walk out with his spear gun and his visors and his flippers, and he'd go diving. You would see him go diving, then we'd see him come back with a bag with octopus, and he would get lobsters and finfish. And one of these days, he invited us to go out there with him, and so we did. And we we were kind of just like shadowing him, and he was the one doing the diving and the fishing. And then slowly, as the weeks went by, we would start, diving. Finally, he gave us a spear gun, which I don't know how smart that was. We were totally unqualified to be in the water with a spear gun. Um, and we started catching stuff, and then we would go back to his house, and he would cook it. And that was kind of my first experience with sea to table. And
Yeah.
that was fascinating to me, because even back then, we were already kind of detached from where our food comes from. Food came from a supermarket, it came from a package, it came, you would go out and buy it, and this idea of harvesting food straight out of the ocean and then making the ceviche that, for some reason, it just tastes so much better than any other ceviche I've ever had, was fascinating. And that's when I became kind of obsessed with seafood as a consumer. I just started to love seafood, and I would always be seeking out to eat seafood in places that were near the water, that might have direct access to the product. And most seafood is of fantastic quality if it's if it's local, if it's coming from the waters of where it's being served. Um, but then when I came to LA and we opened Chichen Itza, there really wasn't a focus on seafood, and in large part, it's because traditional Yucatan food is not. You would think it's more, but it's not very seafood forward. And the seafood repertoire of Yucatan cooking is very basic. You have your fried fish, you have your ceviches, you have your cocteles, and a few guisados, as we call them, or like stews, braises slash stews with octopus, and that's about it.
Why do you think that
Um,
is?
I don't know. I've asked myself that many times. I do not know why. That's a question worth a deep dive, going down there and doing some research.
Yeah.
But compared to other coastal regions of Mexico, the repertoire of seafood, of mariscos, is very small. There are very few things that you can clearly identify as unique to Yucatan in terms of seafood. Maybe the style of our cocteles and the pulpo en su tinta, are the most representative, and everything else apart from that is it's like ceviches and tostadas, and it's pretty pretty easy to find in other coastal regions of Mexico also.
You have this love for seafood, and you start trying to, or you start experimenting with seafood at Chichen Itza. And obviously, you just mentioned there's not a huge tradition of seafood cooking in Yucatan cuisine. So where were you getting the inspiration for your flavors and your creations from?
So the original idea for Holbox was to be this little ceviche bar that had three types of ceviches, two or three types of cocteles, and that yeah, we would rotate between different types of fin fish and different types of products, but it was really just supposed to be this tiny, almost an annex to Chichen Itza. As a matter of fact, I thought about calling it like just being part of Chichen Itza, like Chichen Itza's ceviche bar. Um,
Hmm.
and the thing is, that it had a big kitchen. The space that we got, we really got it. I really leased that space to do like prep and production for Chichen Itza and to do catering. The idea was not to have this standalone restaurant that specialized in seafood and had a full menu. On the day that we opened, we had already modified that idea, and the night before opening, I went out and I got a grill. So I got this, wood burning grill to do to do mesquite grilled stuff on, and we started doing grilled fish tacos. And
Hmm.
if we're doing grilled fish tacos, we're already doing tacos. Well, let's go ahead and do like a Baja taco. And well, we have this grill. We're not just going to do a grilled fish taco. Let's do a whole grilled fish and let's do grilled octopus. So the menu, started expanding there, and I just had so much fun with the expansions. It was like it was liberating after a lot of time working in the traditional Yucatan kitchen of Chichen Itza. And look, I love that food. I grew up eating it. It's there tons of flavor memories in there, and there's dishes that remind me of grandma and other special occasions. But it's very static. The menu doesn't change, and I found that like Holbox became this little like creative outlet for me to this is like I can do other things, and really quickly started to go outside of the realm of Yucatan style food, and I'm like, well, I want to explore the other coastal regions of Mexico because there's so much, you know, variety and there's so many interesting recipes and things that we can do, especially here in Southern California, being so close to Baja California. All the product from Baja California is really local. I mean, if we're talking in terms in terms of oceans, it's very much local to us. So as I'm adding dishes and recipes to Holbox and really just having a lot of fun with it, expanding into other coastal regions of Mexico and starting to dabble into, like, I already mentioned, like the Baja style tacos, the aguachiles, that are definitely not Yucatan Peninsula style. Holbox just turned into this concept of coastal regional Mexican food, with just there's only two constants in our, maybe three, but let's say three constants in our food. It has to be Mexican, it has to be anchored in traditional Mexican recipe. From there, we give ourselves a little bit of creative freedom to play around with it, but it has to be anchored that way. It has to be made with local Southern California, most of the time local Southern California. We do use Mayan octopus from the Gulf of Mexico, and there's something else. Oh, we use branzino also, which is not local at all, but it is a solid fish that people love, and that's why we have it on the menu. And then number three, it has to be things that are exciting for us as cooks, and I think that's one of the most important ones, is that we need to be excited about the ingredients. We need to be excited about the processes that we're doing. We need to be excited about what we're doing on a day-to-day basis to kind of continue the growth and the forward momentum of our kitchen. but also so we can kind of transfer that excitement over to the guests. And I find that the the more the more excited my team is about either a new ingredient or a new process. Let's say, I don't know, our tostada raspadas that we're doing now. It's just a tostada, right? But it's a really cool tostada for us, and we're super excited. And as I'm doing rounds and walking down the ceviche bar, I always hear my staff, you know, and I see them showing the tostadas and doing the motions, showing the guests how we make them. Are you familiar with the tostada raspada?
I've read about tostada de la espada.
So tostada suffered kind of the same fate that bread did with Wonder Bread. It just became it comes from a bag. It's in every supermarket. It's cheap. It's unimportant, right? And it's everywhere. It doesn't really matter. The tostada espada is a style of tostada originally from the state of Jalisco. You spend a lot of time making it, and you starts off as a fresh ball of masa, exactly the same ball of ground up nixtamal that you use for a good handmade tortilla. You press that, handmade tortilla, it goes on the comal. Now, once it goes onto the comal, which is the griddle, a hot griddle, um, the process of cooking it is a little different. We want to undercook one side. That's kind of the most important thing. Slightly overcook the other side. So there's only one flip, and it's a very quick flip. It's for a few seconds, right? Like 95% of the cooking is on one side. So when we take this tortilla off the comal, essentially we have a slightly crispy bottom and a raw top. And then that tortilla goes on to the metate, which is the traditional Mexican volcanic stone grinding table or device that you use to grind up your nixtamalized corn to make masa, or let's say your chiles and ingredients for a mole. And with the mano, which is the long kind of bar shaped piece of volcanic stone that you use to grind with, we peel off the top layer of raw masa, and that's where it gets its name, raspada. That action is raspar. Estamos raspando las tortillas. Um,
It means to like
so
scrape, to
it means
scrape,
to scrape.
or
Yeah, yeah, we're
yeah.
scraping them exactly. So two things happen when you do that. Number one, you get a thin tortilla, right? So it's half the thickness that it originally was. And number two, you've exposed the interior porous, damp surface of the tortilla. So the next step is dehydrating them. Now, traditionally, these would go onto planks and they would go onto the roof. And they would be sun dried. Here we do use a dehydrator. We don't set them out on in the parking lot.
The roof of Mercado La Paloma just full of the tostadas that are sun dried out.
Absolutely not. So we use a dehydrator. They go into the dehydrator for an initial drying. They go in for 2 hours. We take those out and then we let them dry just on like cooling racks in the kitchen for an additional at least 24 hours, preferably 48 hours. So at this point, the tortilla is dry. It's tough, but it's like chewy. It's definitely not a good it's not a good bite. Then it gets fried, and then when this dehydrated, thinned out tortilla gets fried, it almost takes on like a chicharron like puff. It gets like little air bubbles work their way into it, and it's just a different texture. But more important, I mean, the texture is very important, very very important. Also, very important is that it's nice and thin. It's not a thick, chewy tostada. And if we're doing a ceviche and we're like taking extra time and care to source this beautiful fish, and it's delicate, and we're trying to balance the salt and the acidity and the ceviche and the right amount of vegetables, we're trying to compose a good ceviche. We want to pair that with like the best tostada that we can, and one that doesn't overpower the ceviche, that really just complements it. um and then it has a well defined corn flavor because it started off as a fresh ball of masa. So things like that, and we're excited about the tostadas. And we when we tell our guests, I can see that excitement transferring over to the guests, and that's really kind of the core of what we do.
I love that. I mean, I'm not even a guest right now. I'm just a dude listening to you describe this, and the excitement is transferring over to me. And it's because it's like you are describing like fanaticism that bread bakers use for their perfect sourdough loaf, or pizza makers use for their dough or something like that. For, as you said, an ingredient that I think a lot of us associate with just people pulling out of a bag, even at the finest cevicherias in Los Angeles, right? You don't really think of the tostada as the star in a lot of the like dishes that you eat. So it's really cool the amount of dedication and attention you're putting to it.
Yeah, it's important, and I don't like to use the analogy too much of comparing ceviche to sushi. Although there are some parallels, right? But sushi rice, it's so important. It's just as or more important than the protein that goes on it. It's just a super important component of it. And I love sushi. And I've always eaten sushi and said, man, I wish there was a combination in Mexican food that was as perfect as sushi, rice, and fish. And there might not be yet. I think there is. That's a tough one to beat. But if we're going to be doing tostadas, we want to do them with we want to get as close as we can to making the perfect tostada. And we're never going to get there, and our raspadas are by no means perfect. There are better ones out there, I am sure, but it's ours, and we enjoy the process, and we learned how to do it on our own. And it's like I said, it's just one of those things that we're excited about, and we're excited to tell people about.
Very, very cool. I want to hear about some of your other dishes because I think there are some iconic ones that, whenever you hear of Holbox, you see pictured things like the pulpo en su tinta, the kampachi taco. I'm curious about, how do you come up with these things? How do you come up with these dishes? How do you ideate them? And is there one that you're particularly proud of that you're like, if you're visiting Holbox, you cannot leave without having this particular bite?
I would say the one I'm most proud of right now, and this does change, is the smoked kampachi taco. I love the taco in and of itself. I love the fact that it pays homage to a traditional Mexican style of taco, which is the smoked marlin taco. And I love the fact that it's one of those recipes that we get to use the entire fish. That recipe came from a place of, well, we're buying all this, beautiful whole kampachi, and we're using the fillets, and we're using the skin, and we're using the bones, for stock. But what do we do with all these heads, And so what we do with the heads is that we smoke them. So we hot smoke the heads in apple wood, and then we till they're fully cooked and almost kind of falling apart. Then we pick all the meat off the head, so the crown and the cheek and all the gelatinous bits around the eyes and the eye sockets. Take all that meat off, so this is like a very gelatinous, kind of
I
very umami forward meat. And it's probably the best meat. I would say the head is the best, and then the collars, and then the rest of the fish. So we take all this meat that we smoke a big pile of heads, and we take all the meat off. Then we make what's called a guisado. So it's basically stewed in like chilies, dried chilies, aromatics, and herbs. And what we end up is with this really broken down. The meat gets broken down completely into like paste. And I shouldn't use paste. That sounds terrible. It's a spread. It's like a spread. This
I understood if it was a paste, a spread, whatever, don't worry.
It all works for you? Good. Okay. So then this spread goes inside like a really nice handmade tortilla, which we should also talk about the masa program that we have right now. Some really nice locally made Oaxaca cheese, and the tacos folded over kind of like a quesadilla, and it's griddled both sides with a little bit of clarified butter to get a little bit of crunch on the tortilla. and then we serve that with a peanut salsa macha and then a salsa cruda, a little slice of avocado, and it's just a really tasty taco. But the process of the heads and using the entire fish, um, that's something that I really like. I'm in that phase where I was learning about classic cooking and making sauces. Charcuterie was something that absolutely fascinated me, and we also make a fish sausage. Yeah, let's just call it fish sausage. I was going to say something like sausage, but that doesn't really work. Um, and the fish sausage is made with the scrapings of the carcass of different varieties of fish. So after we've filleted the fish, we just take a spoon and scrape all the meat off, and then that gets frozen into discs in little deli cups. And then when we have enough discs, we semi thaw it out and then run that through the grinder and make a sausage with it, which is part of our seafood stew. It goes into our seafood stew.
That is amazing. I love this ethos of, nothing gets thrown away. We find a way to repurpose everything. And, I can only imagine what's going on in your mind when you're thinking of these things. You're like, okay, I'm pulling back from all of this knowledge I have from these various cooking books and techniques and whatnot that I've read about. How can I put A with B and make something spectacular? I mean, it's like seeing a beautiful mind right now happening in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have that background, and I'm by no means a classically trained chef, or I can't even claim to remember everything that I studied in those books, but the concepts of of fabrication and of butchery and of making sauces and bread making, they still kind of linger around there. I have this idea, I remember, that you can use this for that, and I think that does come into play, but. Yeah, our food is I think the food of Holbox is unique in this sense that it originated at Mercado La Paloma. So really the only restaurant where I've cooked at, professionally, is Chichen Itza. A year or so at the second location, MacArthur Park, that folded. But mostly all of my cooking experience is in this one building in South LA in Mercado La Paloma. And the kind of the concept of Holbox is not of any specific region, although there is, probably more Yucatan influence than of any other coastal region of Mexico. But I think Holbox is unique in that sense that if you like it, this is kind of the only place where you can get it. I
True.
don't think, yeah.
There's nothing that I've had like it. I mean, even when I think of like really famous seafood restaurants, even in Mexico, you think of like Contra Mar or something like that. Yeah, it's not the same. It's just not the same. There's nowhere that I've ever eaten that is quite like Hobosh, and I mean that as a compliment. I do want to talk to you about the Masa program though, because I know that that's something that you all have worked really hard on, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about how it came together and what distinguishes it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for those kind words. They're very very generous, and really do appreciate it. The Masa program that we have it's not ours. It's really not a Holbox program. It's one of our team members. So um, one of our chefs, Fatima, who was part of the original team, which it was only four of us when we opened Holbox in 2017. So she was one of the four, and she came via Chichen Itza. She was working at Chichen Itza, and I kind of I saw the potential in her. She was pretty amazing, and I pulled her over to Holbox. She was with us for many years, and then she kind of stepped away to go work at other kitchens and kind of follow other opportunities. And now she came back, and she has she does two things for us. She's our catering chef, so she's in charge of offsite events and all that kind of stuff. And then she's also running her own masa program called Comal with a Komal, Los Angeles. And this is her small business that she's starting, and she's currently running it out of the Holbox kitchen, where she is buying heirloom varieties of corn from a company called Tamoa in Mexico. And Tamoa is a little different from the other companies that are importing corn in that they work with the farmers, with the families, to buy leftovers of corn that they have, to buy whatever it is that they're farming. They don't come in and say, well, I want you to do this and I'll buy it at this price. It's more of a partnership that they have with the farmers. Anyway, so she's bringing in different varieties of corn, and we're getting to explore certain varieties of corn that we've never had before. She's currently has some corn from Yucatan coming in, and some from Estado de Mexico, and some from Oaxaca, and these are red corns, pink corns, blue corns, yellow corns, cremoso, which is like a creamy, light, like white, almost between white and yellow corn. And yeah, I mean, we get to have this amazing variety of masas that changes several times, sometimes per week. And then she gets space to start her business. So, and we're very excited about that, and just having the aromas of nixtamalizing corn and grinding corn in our kitchen every morning is it's special. And
Really cool.
it makes for really great tostadas and tacos, and it makes for fantastic tostada raspadas also.
And the actual nixtamalization. A lot of I feel like quite a few taquerias these days you can see them making tortillas in house, but the actual nixtamalization process still happens elsewhere. So pretty cool that it's happening right there on site when you go to Holbox.
Yeah, I mean, and there's definitely a few places that do it. I mean, right off the top of my head, I could mention Taco Maria, Carlos Salgado. He was a really early proponent of corn as this as kind of the foundation of his Mexican kitchen, and he paid a lot of attention to varieties of corn and using and doing their own nixtamalization. He was, one of the first ones. Now there's several restaurants that do it. We didn't for a long time. We were buying our masa from a really good molino in East LA, and we still work with them. Chichen Itza still uses their masa, and we still use their masa for certain things. Unfortunately, we haven't polished our process for making tostadas raspadas to the point where we can make that for everything. We just use it for the kind of menu category of tostadas. We have these little tostaditas, a little larger than taco size. And the idea of that kind of section of the menu, which has only been on the menu for 3 months, is that you can order, mix and match them like you do tacos, and you don't have to commit to a big bowl or a big plate of ceviche, but you can get one of this, one of this, one of that, and that's what we use the tostada raspadas for. Although I would love one day to be able to scale up the production. They are very labor intensive, and it would require some serious planning to do that. But to scale up the production to be able to use them for everything. But right now, we're very happy just having them available for those kind of special menu items for our tasting menus, and just and and having this beautiful masa for every single tortilla that comes out of the kitchen, tacos and orders. Yeah.
That's awesome. Really cool. I want to talk about real quick the omakase experience that's available at Holbox because I think that's. Am I correct in saying that's something that came later down the line? Wasn't there on day one?
Was not there on day one. No, no. That's that the tasting menu kind of evolved from just regular guests starting to come in and asking not to be burdened with choice, saying, "Hey, can you just make stuff for me?" And yeah, I was more than happy to, and we would give them a little ceviche and get a little have fun with it, get a little creative, and just make something that we've never made before. And because we knew these were regular customers, and they wanted something different, something new. So then they started, telling other people about it, and more guests started coming in and asking for the omakase experience. To the point where we're like, well, should we just like officially offer a tasting menu? And we did, and it got off to a very slow start. I remember when it started, we would book, on a good week, we would have 5 guests come in. And we were offering it Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, a single seating per day. And we would have like 2 guests on Friday and maybe 3 guests on Saturday, and that was it. And it slowly started getting traction to the point where we were starting to have issues because we were just writing these reservations down on a sheet of paper. Um, Maybe it was like a calendar app on an iPad, something like that. And as it started getting more traction, we decided I think we need a reservation platform because this is getting a little complicated. So we did, and we started putting the reservations out on Talk, and then more people started coming in, and we started getting some mentions in some articles about the Mexican seafood tasting menu, and it started snowballing, and now it's a thing. I mean, it's a part of what we do, and we only offer it 2 nights a week. It's Thursdays and Fridays, with 2 seatings, a 6 o'clock and an 8 o'clock. And we were in the very, very fortunate and blessed position to be sold out for 2 months, which is how long we offer it for. And yeah, it's not a lot of seats. We just do 16 guests per day on Thursday and 16 on Friday. And it's something that we'll continue to do because it's so much fun to do. It's a great opportunity to sit down in front of 8 people and really try to tell the story of who we are and what we're trying to do. Most
That's
of the I thank thank you. Yeah, most of the items on the omakase on the tasting menu are not on the regular menu, and it's just kind of a, a a synthesis of ingredients that we're excited about, uh, preparations or techniques that we're experimenting with or playing around with or thinking about incorporating into the regular menu, and just kind of the essence of what we're excited about as chefs. And then it's a fantastic opportunity to connect with the diner, and really just you're sitting down in front of them for an hour and a half, and we get into conversations very much like this one about the origins and the why and the what, and get to know a lot about the customers also.
what a treat. I love that. I mean, I'll talk about unique dining experiences around the city. I have to ask about this because, it's been a big year for Holbox. You have been named the 2023 LA Times Restaurant of the Year. It's not the first accolade you've received. You've been nominated for James Beard Awards, and you've been on countless best of lists, including I named you the number 3 best taqueria in Los Angeles on my crawl of taquerias last year. We joked about that on Instagram. I'm not throwing shade.
I think you
But
owe me a plaque.
no, I do. I owe you a plaque. I was hoping you didn't
It's
bring it up, but I will. I
oh,
owe you a.
I've been waiting to mention that. It's there's a space on the wall that is empty, and it's waiting for that plaque.
Okay, well, as I said, I'm coming on Thursday. Who knows? Maybe you'll get your plaque. Who knows? Who knows? Uh, I just wanted to ask, what has all of this acclaim been like? What is, especially the LA Times Restaurant of the Year, getting that call? How did that feel?
It's very surreal. We already talked about kind of my journey to where we're at right now with Holbox, in that I didn't like to cook, and very much self-taught, and it's if yeah, it's very surreal to be in this position, to be in the privileged position of being able to kind of represent an amazing collection of restaurants that could have been restaurant of the year this year, that were deserving, that were I'm sure that were candidates, and they were in discussions, and I feel very lucky that we got picked as one. I'm not saying it's all luck. I do understand that we put in the work and the passion and dedication, and that I have an amazing team that come in every day and just knock it out of the park, um, to put us in the position to be in the conversation. But yeah, I kind of feel lucky to be the chosen one this year to represent an uh, amazing just collection of restaurants, of family owned restaurants, of chefs, of of this all these places that make Los Angeles this amazing place to eat in. So yeah, it's definitely it's a blessing. It's amazing. Um, hearing the news, the first thing was I mean, it's disbelief. It's like, did did I hear that right? I'm sure I
How did
didn't
you
hear
hear?
that right. Huh?
How did you hear? Like, what was it? An email? Was it a phone call? What
You
happened?
know, it was an email. It was an email, and it makes it even so much more special. Um, this Restaurant of the Year uh, award, because the person who wrote me the email was Lori Ochoa. I don't know if you know Lori Ochoa, but she was Jonathan Gold's wife. And Jonathan Gold was the first person. I mean, going even further back, he was the first like supporter of Holbox, the first person that started. I'm sorry, of Chichen Itza, that started writing about Chichen Itza, and he was by far the first person to write something in a major publication about Holbox. And this was a few months after we'd opened, and we knew that Jonathan Gold was a supporter of ours through Chichen Itza. And my wife and I had conversations often about, I wonder if Jonathan Gold's ever going to come by and if he's going to review Holbox and what he's going to think. And he started showing up 3 or 4 months after we opened. And I was truly hoping that he wasn't going to be writing something anytime soon, because I didn't feel that Holbox had found its footing yet, and I didn't think that we'd found our style. I very much knew that we were still kind of we were exploring. We hadn't landed on what Holbox is today. We were still kind of refining the concept and what it was going to be. But indeed, he did write a review, and it was a fantastic review. It was such a beautiful and great review. And a few months after the review came, he asked me to co-host with him the Taste of LA um, at Paramount Pictures, and I did, and I saw him for the first time in person since the review came out, at the Taste, and we were gonna share a stage for something. And I told him, "Hey, Jonathan, by the way, I hadn't, had the opportunity to tell you in person. Thank you so much for that beautiful review. I really appreciate it." Jonathan was always, a little difficult to read, at least to me. I didn't exactly know what he was thinking or what he was trying to say. And he said all he answered. He kind of paused for a second and thought, and he said, "Yeah, I think the food should be better in a few years." And I was like, what do I do with that? Did you like it? Did you not? Like, what are you saying? But I do like, it took me a while, probably until now, and probably through having a few conversations with Lori about what Jonathan thought of Holbox, and it was that he saw something. It was unpolished. It wasn't there yet. But what he was trying to say was, hey, you know, I believe in you. Keep at it. Keep working on this, and it's gonna work. And so the fact that I got the email about Restaurant of the Year from Lori made it even more special because of that. I think Jonathan Gold is a huge reason why we are where we are.
That's such a cool story, man. I mean, it's almost like a full circle moment in that way.
It is. I mean, I think I'm done. I think I can retire now. That's it.
No, you got a lot. You got a lot of cooking ahead of you, and actually, that leads me to my final question, which is, what's next? I mean, obviously, you're going to get your plaque from the LA Food Podcast, and that's going to be huge for you. But what else? What else is next? What's coming up? What can we expect?
Oh, I think a lot of the same. I think my joy is in running my little seafood stand in our little food hall in South LA. I used to think that expanding and maybe moving to a different location, maybe a fancier location, was gonna be the direction I wanted to go into, because that would mean accomplishment, that would mean success. Um, as of today, as we're having this conversation, I feel that we've achieved, what we set out to do, and more, a lot more. I mean, never thought we'd be in this position to have so many wonderful, supporting customers coming to our little seafood stand, and to be on the LA Food Podcast, and to be in Chicago for the James Beard Awards, and to be the restaurant of the year. Um, I think I'm going to continue to do exactly what I've been doing, and that is, continue to try to be excited about seafood and cooking for our customers, and being in there with the team, and not really thinking about you know other restaurants or projects at the moment. If the right opportunity comes along, and I do sit down and take the meetings, and listen to people when they have something to say. But for now, I'm very happy where we're at. So just just more Holbox at Mercado La Paloma.
So what you're saying is we might see a whole bush at LAX coming soon? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Uh, I look. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and also from the bottom. I think from. I don't like to speak on behalf of all Los Angeles diners because I don't represent them all. However, I think that the city owes you and your family a big thank you for all of the work you've done over the past 2 decades, just to introduce all of us and to bring us excellent Yucatecan food, and for the last 5 to 10 years of all of the passion that you've put in to the world of seafood and bringing that to us. So just thank you, and thank you for joining us today. I on a closing note, where can people find you if they're looking for you? Our listeners, if they've never heard of Holbox, where can they find you online?
So you can find us on Instagram at Holbox Los Angeles, our website, holboxla.com. Or better yet, just stop by Mercado La Paloma and say hi. Usually there.
Awesome. Chef, well, thank you so much for making time for us. And yeah, wishing you all future success. And I can't wait to try one of these tostada raspadas, which I will not be able to stop dreaming about for the entire day. So thank you for that.
Luca, it was a lot of fun talking with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a treat to get to share our story, with the listeners of your podcast, who are enthusiasts of food and the LA dining scene. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast, and thanks to our illustrious guest, Gilberto Cetina, for joining us. If you like what you heard, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe. It turns out those pesky ratings and reviews really help, so honestly, if you leave one, I will be eternally grateful. We'll be back next week, and if you're looking for me in the meantime, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at the LA Countdown. That's TheLaCountdown. You can also find me on Instagram at LA Food Pod. That's LAFoodPod.